We'll we will discuss about how do we deploy Microsoft Security Service Edge Solution (SSE) in a little methodical way, in a structured way. Once you have the right stakeholders on the table or on the call, you'll have to help them understand about the business value of SSE, Security Service Edge Solution. That'll be the starting point. That is something which is important. Even if they know it, you still have to kind of walk them through the business value because different people will have different perspective just to make sure we all speak the same language. That'll be the starting point. So starting with the business value, you can talk about those, the simplicity of um, the way the solution is laid out completely, and the very policy, the zero trust architecture policy on which the whole solution is laid out. Um, the continuous access evaluation (CAE), what you get to have in when you leverage this SSE that comes from the internet access for Office 365. Now, the simplified network access security, what the end users are going to get, the simplicity to deploy, tight integration with the graph services, a centralized policy across all the corporate resources such as identity, data, and also apps. A great user experience to kind of boost the productivity. Those high-level business benefits you can lay out. The integrated fabric what we are going to provide for this organization. That should be the key takeaway. After that, you can start talking about the features. Features are the three main components of this SSE solution. You can break it down and then talk about it one by one. This internet access, what this does, I mean, Microsoft Entra Internet Access will help you to secure access to all the internet accesses, SaaS resources, while protecting your organization against any of the internet threats, bad traffic, etc. Right? So you can block those sites or allow those certain sites. End of the day, it's on the uh, um, for the benefit of security. You can have certain token level token protection, web content filtering, cloud firewall. I mean, the web content filtering is a key takeaway, if you will, wherein you can, categorically say the set of websites, maybe an FQDN like Ferrari.com will be blocked, or maybe categories like social networking or maybe professional networking would be blocked. So you can have those flexibility with regards to certain set of users in your organization will have a full-blown access to internet. Certain set of users will have restricted. End of the day, it is to protect your users, to make them productive, in addition to those controls and then additional token protections and threat protection, what we essentially receive. Now, the second one is basically your internet access for Microsoft 365. This is typically, again, everything is laid basis on the zero trust architecture and the end user experience. So the data exfiltration attempts in terms of users, knowingly or unknowingly trying to transfer data from their on premises or maybe cloud to some other trial tenant they spin up, or maybe some other competition tenant. We can achieve that restriction by using tenant restriction v2. We can apply compliant network location with the conditional access policy. We can maintain those source IP address from the original egress IP address. I mean, if you look at the RBC, risk-based conditional access, often when the customers are using VPN solution, their original IP address would be masqueraded, and then thus Microsoft Entra ID getting a false impression that the user is from a different location, and thus having a lot of false negatives, false positives, if you will. So with this, we can restore the source IP address from the original egress IP to enhance the security logs. Now the last one is basically the private access piece. This is as simple as kind of helping the end users to be able to securely access the private application inside your premises, completely built on zero trust principle. It's not a legacy VPN style wherein you kind of open the whole Pandora's box. It's like you have sort of a one-on-one mapping, which user gets access to what resources and what multi-factor authentication or what authentication needs to be prompted. All of that flexibility and easy onboarding and per app access control, very granular app segmentation, everything you get with this. Intra private access. Right now, it's only TCP. I mean, other protocols should also get onboarded, but at least you can start with your any LOB websites or maybe printers or file servers or RDP servers, etc., etc. All of them is covered. Having the right audience is always important, so make sure that you identify the stakeholders and you get the sponsor of the program on the call or maybe on the email thread. Help them understand whatever we have spoken about earlier, but make sure that the stakeholders are identified and involved early on, right? So the sponsor, the end user community, the pilot users, the IT team, the architect or the global administrator of that particular tenant, the application owners, because we might even publish certain private application, right? So the security team or maybe the security owner, the compliance owner of that organization, and essentially the program manager who will be able to, perform this or make sure that the activities of the project is in the right direction. So that way, make sure the stakeholders are identified and engaged early on, and then you kind of make sure there is a RASI chart which is created, kind of having certain responsibilities, accountability, and also information which is kind of flowing in the complete project, right? So that way you define who does what, and then you kind of have that communication planned out as well. Might as well write it down. So RASI, and then you set the communication, and you define the timelines, which is agreeable to both the parties, to the customer and also to the engineer who's deploying or assisting the customer with the deployment. Um, right. So set like how long the prerequisite will take, possibly 1 hour, 2 hours for them to understand what are the prerequisites. Set some time for the initial configuration, possibly 1 to 2 hours, and then all depends upon your flexibility and then the how fast the organization can help you enable these policies for you. So that's a communication which you need to have between you and then the team, and then you deploy and test those components individually, and then you try to take the feedback in terms of what are they feeling, what are they experiencing, fine tune the policies, make sure that the all the recommendations are followed with regards to piloting certain set of users to start with, and then you make sure that the break glass accounts are excluded, um, right? So the web categories, and there could be certain changes you have to do in terms of whitelisting certain URLs, etc., FQDNs, etc., that you can accommodate, and then later you can close once the result is absolutely acceptable by the customer. Then they can choose to increase the user crowd or maybe the target users by simply adding more users to the DL you have created, and then in the CA policy, in the conditional access policy, that way they can slowly get towards the a fully deployed state. Rather than doing a big bang, it is always advised to kind of go a little slow and then reach to that particular destination. That kind of almost completes the governance bit of it. Right now, you can, from the technical perspective, you can start defining the prerequisite. To start with, you need to have that Microsoft Entra ID Premium P1 license, right? So the customer needs to have it, and then they need to have a either at least a global secure access administrator, global administrator. If they already have it, that role needs to be there for us to be able to test and validate these features. We need to kind of create that pilot group, who are ready to be part of this particular project, right? So you also need to have a user who is in a foreign tenant to test the tenant restriction, right? You also need to have a certain number of Windows 10 or maybe Windows 11 64-bit hybrid either Microsoft Entra ID joined or maybe hybrid joined computers, right? So and these computers should be able to, should not be desktops for obvious reason, because if you have to test those internet access scenarios wherein you will have to take it out of your network, you need to have the laptops, right? So also those computers, you need to install the the global secure access client, GSAC client, on the device. It can be using Intune or maybe GPOs or maybe manually installed to start with, but that needs to be there, right? So, and for the private access, if you don't have, I mean, the customer does not have a app connector server, then also you need to have a 2012 2016 boxes on which you can install the app connector. That app connector server needs to be able to access Office 365 on 8443 outbound, like a typical internet, or and also needs to be able to access the internal resources, right? So that's kind of a bridge between the user who will hop onto this, the connectivity will land on this box, and then it will make sure that it is able to access the resources. Or high availability or resiliency, you might have to have a little more than, you know one or two servers, so that the connector going down should not mean that the users are not able to access the resources, so have more than two. On a high level, the configuration you have to do would be on the go to entra.microsoft.com. Go to global secure access, and now you go to the um, get started. If it is not enabled, you might have to enable this to start with. Get started, and start. All of that needs to be, if it is not enabled, you'll have to enable that. If in my tenant is already enabled, and then you'll have to activate the global secure access on your tenant. That's a button you get to see if you have not even done that for the first time. And go to connect, and then traffic forwarding. You can enable this. No harming doing it. Basically, unless and until you add the assignments or add appropriate policy, this will not cause any harm. So you can enable these ones. So based on the scenario, you might want to test it one by one, test these scenarios individually. So enable it individually. And on the global setting, session management, make sure you enable these as well, in terms of depending upon what you're testing. I mean, this you need to turn this on, so that those IP restoration, whatever we spoke about, that all will be, you can basically take those benefits of that. The connect, and then you go to client download. You also have the client which you can download, and you can push it down to the, those Windows 10, 11 Microsoft Entra joint computers, or hybrid joint computers. That is also something you can do as a part of a prerequisite. Once that is done, you can, start configuring the individual uh, profiles in terms of your 365 or maybe private access profile or internet access profile, which I'll cover in a different video. All the three. So by with this, you have kind of set the base, and you can start configuring and then testing and validating these features one by one.